Hello students, we are going to be doing these lessons virtually for the next little while until our school is back up and running. While that is happening, I will be posting videos of the PowerPoints basically with my voice behind them. That way I'm able to still go through them with you. I'm able to stop and explain certain things. I'm able to go a little bit deeper than just what the words are on the screen. And I'm able to explain to you the pictures and what the picture has to do with the text that I'm reading. This way you'll be able to get probably the most out of the PowerPoint as possible without me in the classroom with you. And you're able to still kind of understand what I'm talking about. It is kind of hard seeing that I can't see you guys and I don't know if you have questions. So if you do have questions about the things I'm teaching you, please write them down so you can come and ask me later or when we're back in school, or you can email me those questions so I can clarify certain things. Hopefully this will be the best way that you can go through the material with the scenario that we are in, and you're able to stay caught up and you understand the topics I'm teaching you. We are beginning Unit 4, which is the Principles of Design. And with these principles of design, it's important that you understand that the principles are considered the rules of design, whereas the elements are considered the tools of design. The way that I remember this is that principles make rules. Think of the principals at our school. They make rules, and they are the rules of design, whereas the teachers are the tools of design. They are kind of the way that they get the information across to you. So principles are the rules, teachers are the tools, or principles are the rules of design, and elements are the tools of design. And that's kind of how I've always remembered it, and it's helped me when I'm trying to differentiate between the two. So hopefully that helps you know the difference. There are 6 principles of design that we'll be discussing within this unit, and they are scale, proportion, balance, rhythm, emphasis and focal point, and harmony. Oh, sorry, if you have not done this step yet, make sure you stop this video and you print out your note guide. It is still important that you are doing your notes along with this PowerPoint. That way that you can use that for studying and for the end of level test coming up at the end of the year, if that's still on based on the school's closure. I'm not really sure. But you do have those notes printed out. Since I'm not there and I can't give you a copy, you need to make sure you print it out off of Canvas. And you either fill them in with a pen or pencil and then scan them back into the computer so you can submit them, or you can fill them out electronically and then you just submit them into the Canvas when I open up the place for you to submit them. Either way works, but you need to have your notes. So if you have not done that yet, pause the video, get your notes, and then push play and we can move on. Today we will be discussing just scale and proportion. We will not be going through all 6 in this video, just the first 2. And I will kind of explain those to you as we go, and hopefully they make a little bit of sense. This one's kind of a hard topic to understand, so I hope that I'm able to explain it the best way possible without you guys being in class so you can still understand the 2 principles of scale and proportion. Scale and proportion, they're very similar in the fact that they both have to do with size of things and the placement of objects within that size. So when you're doing that, it's very important that you follow scale and proportion. That way your place that you're designing looks like it makes sense as far as the sizing of things all go together. You don't have one really small couch and one really big chair, or one really, really big vase and one really small candlestick on a table. Like everything goes together based on their size. And so we'll kind of go through that, and I will break it up into different steps and certain details to help you understand it. They are very similar, but they're a little different. They both describe shape, size, and amount, and they are both concerned with the relationships of objects and parts of objects. Remember that as you're filling out these notes, you are welcome to pause the video while I'm talking if I'm going too fast, and then push play, and that way you can make sure you get all your notes in. Let's first talk about proportion. So proportion is the definition is kind of a little bit of a tongue twister, and when I say it, it's a mouthful, and it's kind of hard to break up. So I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to break it up, so if it doesn't make a lot of sense. Proportion is the ratio fraction of one part to another part, or of one part to the whole. It's a little wordy, so let me break it down for you. Basically, it says if you were to take one item, so one singular item, so a chair is one item, okay? You then take each part of that chair and you make sure they all go together. The back of the chair matches the scale of the arms of the chair, the proportion of the arms of the chair. The seat of the chair and the back relate in size. The buttons on the chair are not too overly small or too overly large for that particular design. So as you can see, the pictures on this PowerPoint, the 3 chairs that I chose, they do not follow the rules of proportion, because if you look at the first picture, the arms are much more large than the chair and the chair seat. If you were to have to try and sit in that chair, I don't know about you guys, but me personally would not be able to fit my ankle in that gap. So maybe if you're really small, you could fit into it just fine, but in relation to the proportion, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The same thing with the second chair. The back is much too tall for the rest of the chair, and it does not fit proportion-wise. And then the third chair, the back is much too long, and the headrest is no longer near anyone's head. If your bodies actually looked like that and you were at that long of a torso with that short of legs, it might be a little interesting. So as you can tell, each of these chairs do not follow that rule. The rule of proportion is a very important factor when selecting the position of furniture and accessories in a room, so that it all goes together and it flows easily and it's visually pleasing and it just makes sense when you walk into a space. For example, proportions is a good consideration when choosing a shade for a lamp. The lamp base and the lamp shade need to be in proportion with each other. They are parts of the same object. Yes, they are 2 different pieces of an object, but without both pieces, you don't have a lamp. To have a lamp, you have to have a lamp shade and you have to have a lamp base, okay? Proportion is also a factor to consider when choosing the surface on which to place the lamp. The lamp and the table need to be in proportion with each other. They are different objects, but they're in the same group. A group of designs would be an area in which you're designing, like an entryway table or a nightstand or a wall with different pictures. It's different things, but they're in the same group because that together is what you're designing. The accessories that surround the lamp and table need to also be considered as far as sizing goes. The accessories need to be in proportion with both the lamp and the table, and different objects, but they are also, again, in the same group. If you look at these pictures, yes, these lamps are a little out of style, but they are a good example of using proportion. You can tell that on the top picture, the lamp, it does have a really nice shape, but the lamp shade is way too short for the lamp base, and so it doesn't work together. That's how it's 2 different objects, but 2 different pieces, but they're part of the same object. And then the second picture, the lamp shade is much too large for the lamp base, and it overpowers it, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. What I was going to do at this point is you guys would go through and you would look at each of these nightstands, and you would tell me which one uses proportion the best and the most effectively. Since we're not in class and I can't ask you, I'm just going to let you guys kind of look at them and decide. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds, and then I'll tell you which ones are right and which ones are wrong and why. So look at them and try and decide which one you think is the best. Okay, this one is wrong because the lamp is much too large for that table, and the jar of flowers is much too small compared to the lamp. This one is right. If you look at the size of the table, the size of the lamp, and the size of the accessories, they all go well together. This one is wrong. The lamp and the accessories are much too small for that size of table. Now, none of these items are like wrong. You can buy all of these items, but you need to make sure, like on this one with the glass nightstand, if you want that big of a nightstand, you need to have a larger lamp and a larger clock and a couple of other things on that table. If you want to have the first one and you want to have a smaller table, you just need to have a smaller lamp. That way the proportions all make sense. Good proportion is important when furnishing a room. The chairs, the table, and the pendant light should be thought of. Sorry. Okay, sorry. So good proportion is important when furnishing a room. The chairs, the table, and the pendant light should be thought of as one element when designing a room. Notice in these dining rooms, the light fixtures are way too large and they overwhelm the space. None of these light fixtures are necessarily bad light fixtures. They're just not placed in a large enough room with a large enough table underneath. They're just a little bit too big based on the things that they are being used with. The light fixtures in these dining rooms are much more proportionate in keeping with the style and size of the furnishing. You've got a small round table in this. I think it actually might be a motorhome. But the small round table with these few chairs match this small round light perfectly. Same thing with the other dining room. The light matches a lot better with that size of table and that size of space. This is a picture that I find very interesting. So, it is a good idea, but it is a terrible execution. Let me explain why. I'm sure you guys have already noticed. But, a very common, design choice when choosing to furnish a dining room is that you have these side chairs, like the tables on each side, the chairs on each side of the table. They are, they match each other. They're either a wooden chair or they are a metal chair, whatever style you're going with, but they are a certain kind of chair. And then the two head chairs, the one at the top and one at the bottom of the table, those are a nicer chair. They're a more, they're upholstered or they're a little nicer. It basically is saying like the two heads of the household one sit on one end and the other sits on the other end. And that is kind of like their spot. Like they're the king, queen, whatever of the castle, and they have the nicer chair. So it is a common choice to use that, whereas they use a different, more, fancier or more, I don't know what the word I'm trying to think of is, but just a nicer version of a chair. And then, but the reason this picture is so wrong, or this design is so wrong, is they took two living room sofa chairs and decided to put them on the ends of the table. I don't think you can even push them all the way in. And then to make it even worse, they decided to put throw pillows on said chairs to have in the dining room. It does not make sense. It's not a good thing. It looks awful. But I can see what they were trying to do, and this is just terrible. I have a next picture shows you the same idea, but executed correctly. And that would be that version right there. If you just look at the differences in the size of those two chairs at the end on this picture and the size of these two chairs on the ends of this picture, you can tell which one makes the most sense and which one looks the best. Here we have an example of two small bedrooms, okay? At some point in your life, you will probably have a small bedroom and you have to figure out how you want to furnish it based on the different sizes. If you have a small bedroom, you can still have a large bed. That's totally fine. Where you get to the point you're an adult, you want a big bed. You don't need to sleep in a twin-size bed anymore. But if you are going to have a large bed in a small room, it is important that you do certain things to make the rest of the room appear larger. The reason the first picture is wrong is because everything is overstuffed. Everything is very large. There's a large headboard. There's large nightstands. There's large lamps. There's very bold curtains. There's a large chandelier. There's a large desk. There's a large padded chair. Everything just looks way too big. Whereas if you needed to have that space, you could do smaller nightstands or maybe just one nightstand, a smaller lamp, no chandelier, a fold down desk maybe, or a folding nice chair, something that gives you much more space. The second picture it shows you, this is a version of a very small space that they're using the space to their most advantage, whereas they are taking that bed and they decided to suspend it from the ceiling so that it was not taking up their floor space. And underneath they had like a dining area or an office area or a game area, whatever, and their bed is not taking up the space of that room. So there are a couple of options you have when you are trying to design a small space. Bed, desk, and chair are too much and too big for this room. If you have a small space, consider a design like this. This area, both these rooms, by the way, I'm not a fan of, but there is an example of the difference in rugs. I feel like the first picture, the people probably like ordered this rug on Amazon and didn't know what the size was, and it came and they were like, well, let's just put it in the middle of the floor. It works just fine. And it doesn't. It's terrible. The rug is way too small. The rug in the second room is much better proportioned for that space. When we're talking about different proportions, it's important that you understand that the Greeks were the masters of the use of proportion. The Greeks honestly were pretty much the masters of all things when it came to building and architecture and design. They were kind of the first to experiment with things and to figure things out the way this should have been done. So the Greeks were the masters of the use of proportion. They developed guidelines that they've used for centuries. When developing a design scheme, ratios such as 2/3, 3/5, and 5/8 are more effective than ratios of 1:1 or 1:2. I know that's a lot of numbers. Basically, what it's just telling you is that uneven numbers or unequal looks a lot better than equal division of things or even lines. Okay, so always remember that unevenness and unequal parts are much more pleasing to the eye than equal parts. For instance, a rectangle has more pleasing proportions than a square. Really look around your space you're in, and I want you to see how many rectangles you see versus how many squares you see. Tables are usually rectangles. Picture frames are usually rectangles. Door frames are rectangled. Windows are usually rectangled. Cabinets are rectangled. I'm just looking around my space right now as I'm listing all of these things. A desk is usually a rectangle instead of a perfect square. A television is usually a rectangle. Rectangles are much more pleasing than a square with the unevenness. These ratios also apply to rooms, furniture, and accessories. The golden mean is a division of a line midway between 1/2 and 1/3 of its length. Basically, it's just saying that if you're going to cut a wall in half, don't do it in half. An unequal division is much more pleasing. Use 2/3 of the wall or 1/3 of the wall. Example would be B and C are much more visually pleasing than A. You never want to divide a wall right in half. It does not look good. So as I'm showing you, I'll show you different images of that being done that make a lot more sense, that makes it look a lot nicer. If you look at the first picture, the hooks and the shiplap go 2/3 of the way up the wall, and the other third is used for different picture frames, knickknacks, things like that. The second picture, the table goes 1/3 the way up the wall, and the other 2/3 of the wall are used for a very large quote, it looks like. And then the table also has decor on it to balance out the space. Here you have the shiplap going up the stairs. It goes 1/3 of the way up the wall, and the other 2/3 are used for different pictures and collages. In the bathroom, the shiplap goes 2/3 of the way up the wall, and the other third is used for paint. Scale relates to the size of design in relation to other items or the surrounding area in which it's placed. So we're going to watch this video. This video is just funny. It's from the movie Zoolander, and it's just
introducing the Capital One Walmart Rewards Card. Earn unlimited 5% back on everything you buy at Walmart online.
No. We're gonna need a mop and bleach.
Including things for your new puppy.
What's in your wallet?
Well, to tell you the truth, I was a little hesitant at first, Mr. Mugatu. I mean, you've never hired me before, and I've been around
for ages and ages. You've been around for a long, long time and never wanted anything from me. And now you're retired. I can't have you. And it's funny how it switches like that. But now the forbidden fruit must be tasted.
Well, when Maury told me what you were willing to do,
Todd! Are you not aware that I get farty and bloated with a foamy latte?
My mistake, Jacobin!
Your mistake indeed! Yes, Derek. What Maury said I was willing to do for you. Let's get back to the reason that we're really here. Without much further ado, I give you the Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good.
What is this?
A center for ants? What?
How can we be expected to teach children to learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
Derek, it's just a
I don't want to hear your excuses! The center has to be at least 3 times bigger than this.
He's absolutely right.
Thank you. I have a vision.
And so do I. Let me show you mine.
So just kind of a funny video, hopefully to raise your spirits a little bit in this lovely quarantine that we're in. If you've never watched Zoolander, I highly recommend it. It's kind of hilarious. So, with that being said, let's move on. Here we have a picture that is, this design in itself is just, It's bad in so many ways. I don't think there's a single part of this design that I like. But it's a good example of a terrible use of proportion. If you really look at this design, you can point out the amount of things that are wrong with it, but we'll go through it kind of fast. These vases, number one, could definitely hide a body. The pillows are too large. The curtains are too large. The flowers are too large. The lamps are too large. Everything is way too large, and everything is brown, and it's just bad. But if you look at this design, you can tell that not one thing is using the proper use of proportion in this picture. To achieve good scale, choose objects that are appropriate for human dimensions and the proper size for the space they occupy. This is where it's important because every single person is different. If you have somebody who is 6'8", okay, who is looking for a home, they're obviously going to require certain specifications that somebody who's 5'9" would require. They're going to need taller door frames, taller ceilings, taller cabinets, higher countertops. They're going to need certain things, whereas maybe somebody in a wheelchair would need things on a much lower scale. You want to make sure you keep things in scale appropriate for human dimensions and the space they occupy. As an example, if you guys have ever walked into like a preschool, if you've ever noticed the bathrooms, the toilets pretty much touch the floor. Anyone who's above the height of 3 foot, they would have quite a long fall before they hit the toilet seat, and it would not be appropriate for their certain size. So we're going to take a tour of a tiny house. If you do not know what a tiny house is, it is not just the term used for a small home. It's an actual thing. And they are homes that are incredibly small, and they're usually mobile, and they're becoming very, very popular in the recent times. So before we do that though, I want you to understand how small a tiny house is. So here is a 3,757 square foot home. A very large house. Whoever lives here is doing very well in life. Congrats. Very beautiful home, very big. Okay. But I want you to see that this is a very large home, and it's about 3,757 square feet. Here's a 2,000 square foot home. Also a large, nice home. Very upscale. Whoever's living here is successful as well. Here we have a cute little 1,000 square foot home. It's a great starter home. You probably would not be able to have a lot of children or a lot of guests in this house because it is on the smaller side, but it's a really cute starter home for a young couple or someone living alone, or maybe a couple with one child or a dog, whatever. But here's a 1,000 square foot home. Here's a tiny house. It is 350 square feet. So it is quite small. I'm going to take you in through this tiny house so you can kind of look at it. Here is, if you were standing in the kitchen, that is how big your entryway is and your living room. Okay. If you were to stand in your doorway, this is how big your living room is and into your kitchen. Your bathroom is also in there. I'm not 100% sure where it is, but I think it's that door right behind the picture frames. I'm thinking that's your bathroom. Okay. About the size of an airport bathroom, an airplane bathroom. Here is your kitchen, one angle of it. Here is your bedroom, okay? It is like a loft type area. And so as you can tell that the tiny house is quite small. So I want to show you this video. It's actually very interesting. I'm not really quite sure why this NBA player decided to build a tiny home, but he is 6'10". And he decides to build a tiny house, which is a little bit different for his body type. And so it kind of goes through this video. It goes through the process in which the builders had to take into account his size while they were building him this tiny house that matched him. We're going to click play.
Wow. So, you hear 6'10"? I mean, here, let's go back to back here real quick. You really 6'10"? Yeah, you are, aren't you?
6'10" with shoes.
He didn't even feel like an athlete. He just felt like a normal guy who happened to be huge.